My sister's wedding was at my own hotel. She told the security, "Kick that poor girl out. She's embarrassing me." Mom laughed. "You don't belong in this luxury. Go home." I took the mic and said, "Cancel the event. Now." The manager bowed to me. The room went cold. She looked at me the way people look at someone who wandered into the wrong room by mistake. The way you look at a stranger who sat down at your reserved table without checking the sign. Except I wasn't a stranger. I was her sister. And it wasn't her table. It was mine. Every chandelier in that ballroom, every white peony arrangement on every table, the marble floors, the arched windows, the string quartet playing near the bar itself. The staff moving quietly between guests with trays of champagne that I paid for, in a building that I own, on a piece of land that my grandmother left to me, because she believed more than anyone else in that family ever did that I was worth believing in. My mother told me I didn't belong in this kind of room. I built the room. My name is Serena Voss. I'm 32 years old. I own a 5-star boutique hotel in the city called the Voss Grand. I've owned it in one form or another since I was 24. Almost no one in my family knows that. I never told them. And for years, I thought that was fine. I thought it didn't matter. I thought the work spoke for itself even when it spoke quietly. I was wrong about that. But I was also right. And the night my sister's wedding reception took place in my ballroom, the night she told my own security officer to throw me out, that's the night everything finally became visible. Let me take you back. But before I do, if this is the kind of story you want more of, please like and subscribe. And drop your country and your local time in the comments. I always want to know where you're watching from. Growing up, our family was ordinary in most of the ways that count. Not poor, not wealthy. My parents, Linda and David, had 2 daughters, 4 years apart. I was the older one. Camille was the one everyone looked at. I want to be careful here, because I'm not telling this story to destroy my sister. Camille is not a villain in the way that word usually means. She's a person who grew up being told she was the center, and she believed it, because nobody ever gave her a reason not to. That's not entirely her fault, but it did shape everything that came after. When I was 14, my parents divorced. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming, no throwing things. Just a slow, quiet dissolution that ended one Tuesday evening when my father sat us both down at the kitchen table and explained, in the careful tone of someone who has rehearsed this, that he and our mother were going to live separately. He said it like he was reading from a card. My mother was in the doorway, arms crossed, not looking at either of us. After the divorce, Camille went with my mother. I went with my grandmother, Eleanor, because that's what I chose. My mother didn't fight it. I'm not sure she fully noticed. Eleanor Voss was my father's mother. She was small, precise, and entirely uninterested in anything that wasn't real. She ran a guest house, 12 rooms, a small dining room, a garden in the back that she kept herself. It was not glamorous. It was clean, well-run, and hers. She'd built it from a single rented room when she was 27, and a widow with no savings and 2 children under 5. By the time I came to live with her, the guest house had been operating for 30 years. Eleanor taught me things that nobody else in my life thought to teach me. She taught me how to read a profit and loss statement when I was 15. She taught me that every guest who walks through a door is trusting you with a small piece of their life, and that trust is not something you take lightly. She taught me that a leaking tap fixed promptly costs almost nothing, but a leaking tap ignored long enough costs everything. She said that about taps. She meant it about everything. I worked at the guest house every weekend and every summer through secondary school. Not because Eleanor made me. She never made me do anything, but because I wanted to. I liked the logic of it. I liked that if you did the right thing at the right time, the numbers reflected it. I liked that the building had a pulse, and I could feel it. During those same years, my mother was rebuilding. She married Douglas, a man who imported furniture from Southeast Asia and sold it at a comfortable markup. Douglas was not unkind. He was simply distant in the way of people who have decided that children who are not biologically theirs are someone else's responsibility. He treated Camille well enough. He treated me. On the rare occasions I visited, with a polite blankness that said everything he needed to say without using any words. Camille grew up in that house with new furniture and a private school, and a mother who organized her social calendar the way other mothers organize school lunches. She was not spoiled in the cheap sense of the word. She was shaped carefully, consistently, into someone who expected the world to arrange itself around her needs. She became very good at being charming, very good at walking into a room and claiming it. She just never checked whose room it was first. I went to university on a partial scholarship. I studied hospitality, management, and finance, because those were the two things I already understood and wanted to understand more deeply. I graduated at 22. I went straight back to Eleanor. She was sick by then. Not suddenly, Eleanor was never sudden about anything, but steadily. A lung condition that had been quiet for years had decided to become loud. She continued running the guest house herself until she physically could not. And when she couldn't, I ran it for her. She died when I was 23. She left the guest house to me. Not to my mother, who was her daughter-in-law. Not to my father, who was her son. To me. She left a letter with the solicitor that said, simply, "Serena knows what to do with it." She was right. I did. The guest house was 12 rooms on a corner plot in a part of the city that was, in those days, not fashionable. But it had good bones and a favorable zoning classification, and I had spent 8 years studying every square meter of it. I knew exactly what it could become if someone was willing to do the work. I was willing. The first 2 years were the hardest thing I have ever done. I took Eleanor's guest house as collateral on a business loan. I found an investor, a woman named Patricia Hahn, who had made her money in commercial real estate and was looking for somewhere specific to put a portion of it. We met through a mutual contact at a hospitality conference. She asked me 3 questions about the property, listened to my answers, and then said, "When can you start?" I liked her immediately. We gutted the building. 12 rooms became 28 rooms across a completely restructured floor plan. The small dining room became a proper restaurant. The garden became a courtyard with year-round outdoor seating, which in our climate required heating infrastructure I spent 6 months figuring out how to fund. I did every operational decision myself and outsourced only what I genuinely could not do. Architecture, electrical, the restaurant, kitchen, fit-out. I slept in the building for the first year. Not in a room, I didn't have a room. They were all under renovation. I slept in the back office on a camp bed, with the building plans pinned to the wall and a notebook on the floor next to me. I ate from the corner shop 2 streets away. I did not take a salary for 18 months. The Vos Grand opened on a Wednesday in October when I was 25. All 28 rooms were booked for opening week, because I had spent 4 months before the opening building relationships with corporate travel coordinators who needed reliable 5-star accommodation for the executives. The restaurant had a 3-week waiting list because I had brought in a chef, Marcus Olin, who had spent a decade in Paris and was quietly brilliant, and made sure the food press knew about him before we opened the doors. By the end of year 1, we were operating at 73% occupancy. By end of year 2, 81%. Patricia Hahn and I agreed on a timeline to buy out her stake, which I completed when I was 29. I currently hold 67% ownership of the Vos Grand. The remaining 33% is split between 2 investors who are entirely silent and entirely satisfied. I tell you this not to impress you. I tell you this because when my mother told me I didn't belong in that room, I want you to understand exactly what room we were talking about. During all of this, all 7 years of it, I was in contact with my family at the level they determined, which was not much. My mother called on birthdays. Sometimes. Camille texted occasionally, the way you text someone you feel mildly guilty about not texting more. Douglas sent a Christmas card every year, always signed Douglas and Linda, never just Douglas. They knew I worked in hospitality. Specifically, they believed I managed a hotel somewhere in the city. Camille once asked me, at a family lunch, whether I was still doing the hotel thing. I said yes. She said that's nice, and then talked about something else for the next 40 minutes. I let her. I had stopped needing her to be interested in my life some years earlier. I did not lie about what I owned. I simply never volunteered it. There was no space in any conversation we had that felt like it wanted that information. And honestly, and I know how this sounds, I wasn't ready to watch my mother recalibrate her opinion of me based on a balance sheet. I wanted at some level to see what we were when I wasn't useful to anyone. The answer, it turned out, was not much, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Camille got engaged to a man named Marcus Redmond 18 months ago. I heard about the engagement via a group text that included me, our mother, Douglas, and several cousins I haven't spoken to in years. The message was from Camille, and it said, "We're engaged," followed by 7 photographs of the ring. I sent her a congratulations message. She replied with a heart emoji. That was the engagement, from my end. The formal invitation arrived 6 months before the wedding date. It was a thick cream envelope, the kind of stationery that costs more than most people's dinner out. Inside, a printed card with gold lettering. Camille Beaumont and Marcus Redmond request the pleasure of your company at the celebration of their marriage. The reception to be held at the Vos Grand Hotel, Grand Ballroom. I read that line 3 times. The Vos Grand Hotel, Grand Ballroom. My hotel. My Grand Ballroom. There was no personal note from Camille, no separate card in her handwriting, just the printed invitation, a response card, and a dress code notice, black tie. I sat with this for 2 days before I called my events director, Helena. I asked her to pull the booking file for the Redmond-Beaumont wedding. She found it in 30 seconds. It had been booked by a Mrs. Redmond Marcus's mother, 7 months prior, handled entirely through our standard channels. Helena had processed it herself. She had no idea the bride's sister owned the building. I asked Helena not to say anything. I told her I would attend as a guest and that the staff should treat me exactly as they would treat any other family member of the wedding party, meaning professionally and without particular deference. She looked at me for a moment, then said, "Understood." She has worked for me long enough to know that I do not make requests that don't have a reason behind them. I thought carefully about whether to tell Camille in advance, about what I owned, about what building she had chosen for her reception. I decided not to. Not because I wanted a dramatic reveal, genuinely, not that, but because I had spent years quietly living a life that my family had never asked about, and I was curious in a detached way. The way you're curious about an experiment you already know, the result of about what that day would look like when I showed up as the person I actually am, in the building I actually own, in the life I have actually built. I RSVP'd yes, single, no dietary requirements. I booked myself at table 11, the furthest table from the head table, assigned to the outer ring of guests, people who were invited because you had to invite them, not because you wanted them there. I noted this. I said nothing about it. The wedding ceremony itself was at a church across the city. I attended. I sat 3 rows from the back. Camille looked beautiful. She has always been beautiful. She was born knowing how to stand in light, and Marcus looked genuinely happy. I am willing to believe that. Whatever else I might say about that day, I do believe that Marcus loves my sister. The reception was at the Vos Grand. I arrived early, because early is always better than late, and because arriving early to your own building feels natural when you've done it every day for 7 years. I wore a charcoal dress that I had bought for a business dinner 6 months ago. It was well cut. It was not a gown. The invitation said black tie optional, and I took the optional at face value. I wore small pearl earrings and low heels. I looked like someone who belonged somewhere without needing to announce it. That was deliberate. Joel met me at the private side entrance, the staff corridor that I use when I'm coming in for a working visit rather than a public one. Joel has worked security at the Vos Grand for 3 years. He looked at me with an expression that I recognized immediately. The expression of someone receiving a conflicting signal through their earpiece, while simultaneously looking at the person their earpiece is talking about. He said, quietly, "Miss Voss, he paused. The wedding coordinator has asked that family guests use the main entrance." I looked past him. Camille was 10 feet away in the private corridor, in her Vera Wang gown, surrounded by 2 bridesmaids and the external event planner, a woman named Diane, hired by Marcus's family, whom I had never met. Camille saw me coming, and I watched her face do something very quick and very calculated. She didn't say hello, she said, to Diane, not to me. Can you make sure family guests are directed to the main entrance? I don't want the back corridor crowded before the first course. Diane looked at me. I looked at Camille. Camille was already turned away. I walked to the main entrance. I collected my name card from the seating table. I found table 11 in the far corner of the ballroom, just past the service station where the waitstaff loaded trays. The table sat 8 people I had never met, a cousin of Marcus's from another city, a former colleague of Douglas's who had apparently been invited out of politeness, and a handful of others who all seemed equally puzzled by the geography of their placement. I sat down. I ordered still water. I watched the room fill. The Vos Grand's grand ballroom holds 300 people when fully configured for a seated dinner. That evening, there were 240 guests. Every chandelier was lit. The white peony arrangements I had approved for this quarter's floral contract were on every table. The string quartet near the bar were musicians I had personally vetted when we redesigned the live music program 2 years ago. This was my room. And I was sitting at the table they put people when they don't quite know what to do with them. During the cocktail hour, my mother found me. She navigated through the room with the particular efficiency of a woman who knows how to work a crowd, and she arrived at my side holding a glass of Prosecco and wearing a lavender dress that she had clearly paid a great deal of money for. Linda. I wasn't sure you'd actually come. Serena. I RSVP'd. Linda. Yes. But you know how these things are. I didn't know how these things were, specifically, but I understood what she meant. She meant events like this, at venues like this, with people like these. She meant that this was not my world. Linda. You couldn't have worn something a bit more its black tie, Serena. Serena. It said optional. Linda. It says optional because it's polite. It doesn't actually mean optional. She looked me over once the charcoal dress, the sensible heels with the expression of someone assessing a room they wish had been decorated differently. Then she saw someone she recognized across the room, and her face rearranged itself into warmth and she was gone. I went back to table 11. I had the salmon. It was excellent. It should be. I approved the menu. The toasts were given. Marcus's best man told a story about a fishing trip that was funnier in the room than I'm making it sound. Camille's maid of honor talked about what a vision of grace and love Camille had always been. My name was not mentioned. I was not surprised. What happened next happened during the open dance portion, when the room had relaxed into noise and movement and the particular looseness that comes from good food and open bar. A woman from Camille's friend group, I would later learn her name was Brie, which is the name of a cheese, and somehow perfectly fitting, came to the edge of table 11 and remarked to no one in particular that this table hadn't received its champagne during the toast. She was right. We hadn't. Every other table in the room had a bottle. Ours had not. I had noticed this earlier and filed it under things I will address tomorrow as the building's owner. But Brie noticed it now and said it loudly, and Camille was nearby enough to hear. Camille walked over, not to apologize for the champagne, to address the source of the embarrassment, which she had decided, without asking, was me. She leaned down to my level. Her voice was quiet, but not private. Camille, Serena, I need you to hear me on something. Some of Marcus's family have been asking who you are, and it's just, today is about image, the way things look, and you're not dressed for it, and sitting here at the back it looks like, I don't know. It just doesn't look right. Serena. What doesn't look right? She straightened up. She looked at me the way she has looked at me since we were children, the look that says, you already know. You've always known. You just refuse to accept it. Camille, you're embarrassing me. Just by being here like this. She turned. Anthony, my security officer, a man I hired, a man who has worked this building for 3 years and knows exactly who signs his paychecks, was standing 6 feet away near the service corridor. Camille walked toward him. Camille, excuse me, can you escort this woman out? She's causing a scene. Anthony looked at Camille. Then he looked at me. He did not move. My mother, who had materialized nearby, I still don't know whether this was chance or choreography, looked at me with the tired patience of someone who has been managing an awkward situation for years. Linda, Serena, darling, you don't belong in this kind of room. You never have. Why don't you go home? Make it easy on everyone. She said it gently. That is the part I keep returning to. She said it gently, as though she were doing me a kindness, as though she were sparing me from something. Anthony was still looking at me. His hands were clasped in front of him, his face professionally still, waiting for one thing only, my direction. I stood up from table 11. I straightened my dress. I picked up my clutch. I looked at Anthony, and I said, "The microphone, please." The room was mid-reception noise when the microphone activated. That particular atmospheric hum of 240 people eating and drinking and talking, it doesn't stop all at once. It drops in layers. First the people nearest me, then the ripple outward. Then the silence at the back of the room as the last few conversations cut off, one by one like lights going out. I did not tap the microphone. I did not say, "Excuse me," or "Can I have your attention?" I simply waited. In my experience, a microphone held by someone who is entirely still, in a room that is going quiet, will finish the job itself. I said, "Serena. Good evening. My name is Serena Voss." A pause. The last few conversations dropped. "Serena. I own this hotel." The silence after that was a different kind of silence. Not the polite silence of someone waiting for a toast. Something else. Something that happens in a room when it realizes, all at once, that it has been operating on the wrong information. Marcus's mother set her champagne glass down. The event planner, Diane, went very still near the door. My mother's face, which I could see from where I was standing, did something I don't have a word for. Not quite shock. Not quite shame. Something that lives between them. Camille had not moved. She was standing 6 feet from me in her wedding gown, and she was the color of the tablecloths. I kept my voice level. Not warm, not cold. The voice I use when I'm presenting quarterly results to my investors. Measured. Clear. No drama. Because I didn't need drama. The facts were already doing all the work. "Serena, I want to begin by congratulating my sister Camille and her husband Marcus on their wedding. I mean that genuinely. This is a beautiful event, and the team at this hotel has worked very hard to make it so. The flowers, the food, the room, everything you're seeing tonight is the result of people who care deeply about doing this work well. I'm proud of all of them." A beat. I let it breathe. "Serena, a few minutes ago, I was asked to leave this building by a security officer who works for me at the request of my sister, because, in her words, I was embarrassing her." Someone near the back of the room made a sound that might have been a sharp inhale. I didn't look toward it. "Serena. And before that, my mother told me that I don't belong in this kind of room." I looked at my mother when I said this. She looked back at me. She did not look away, which I will give her credit for. "Serena, I've thought about how to respond to that for the last 10 minutes, and this is what I've arrived at." I paused, not for drama, because I genuinely wanted to say the next part correctly. "Serena, she's right that I don't belong in this room the way she meant it. I don't belong here as someone's guest. I don't belong here as a family member who was placed at the back table and left off the champagne service. I don't belong here as someone who can be asked to leave by the security staff." I turned slightly toward where Helena, my events director, was standing at the ballroom entrance. She had appeared there quietly, professionally, as soon as the microphone went on. She knew what she might be needed for. "Serena, Helena, the Redmond booking. What does our breach of conduct clause say about same-day termination?" Helena's voice was calm and carrying when she spoke, the voice of someone who is very good at their job and very aware of this moment. "Helena, at the discretion of property management, the event may be terminated with forfeiture of the security deposit. No further liability to the Voss Grand. Serena, thank you." The room had gone very, very still. I want to be clear about what happened next, because I think it matters. I looked at Camille. She was not smirking now, not performing. She was just standing there in her dress, looking small in the way that people look small when something they thought was solid turns out not to be. And I felt not satisfaction exactly. Something more complicated, something that has taken me months to name and I'm still not entirely sure I have. I said, "Serena, I'm not going to cancel this reception. Marcus's family booked this venue in good faith, and his guests have done nothing wrong. The evening will continue exactly as planned. The staff will take care of you. The food will be excellent. The bar is open." A release of breath moved through the room. Not everyone, but most people. "Serena, but I want to say one more thing. And I want to say it clearly." I looked at my mother, then at Camille. "Serena, I built this room. I built it from a 12-room guest house that my grandmother left me because she believed I was capable of something. I have spent 9 years working in this building and in the ones before it, building something real. I have never asked anyone in my family to acknowledge that, or to be proud of it, or to understand it. I didn't need that from you. But I will not stand in the middle of something I built and be told I don't belong here." I set the microphone down on the nearest table. Not a slam, just done. I looked at Anthony. "Serena, please make sure all guests have everything they need for the rest of the evening." Then I looked at Helena. "Serena, can you comp the champagne for every table, including table 11, which was missed during the toast?" Helena: "Of course." James, my hotel manager, 4 years with the Voss Grand, one of the best operational minds I've ever worked with, was standing near the main entrance. He had not said a word. He did not need to. When I walked toward him, he inclined his head in that quiet, formal way that professionals do when they are acknowledging something without making it a performance. I walked out of the grand ballroom. The doors closed behind me, and the only sound I heard, just before they did, was the string quartet resuming. Because the show goes on, in a good hotel, whatever else is happening. I went to my office. It's a small room on the 2nd floor. Nothing impressive. A desk, 2 chairs, a window that looks out over the courtyard garden. I made tea. I sat down. I looked at the garden for a long time. My phone started receiving messages at 9:47 p.m. First from cousins I barely know who had apparently heard a version of events through family channels that moved faster than I would have expected. Then from my Aunt Patricia, who sent a single message that read, "I always knew. I'm proud of you." I put the phone face down and finished my tea. The reception ended at midnight. Helena reported to me afterward that the evening had proceeded without incident. The guests had eaten, danced, and departed normally. The catering team had topped up Table 11's champagne with particular care. Marcus's father had shaken James's hand on the way out and said it was an extraordinary venue. James had thanked him professionally and not mentioned anything else. The next morning, I was in my office by 7. At 8:45, my phone rang. Aunt Patricia, I took it. "Patricia, she didn't know, Serena, your mother, about the hotel. I just want you to know that." "Serena, I know she didn't know." "Patricia, does that change anything for you?" I thought about that for a moment. Outside my window, the first delivery of the morning was arriving at the kitchen entrance. I could hear the familiar sound of the service gate. Serena, she didn't know about the hotel. She knew everything else. She knew that was her daughter standing in that room. She knew what she said. "Patricia, that's true. Serena, that's what I keep coming back to." Patricia said she understood. We talked for another 20 minutes about other things. She asked about the restaurant, which she had read a review of without knowing it was mine. I told her she should come for dinner. She said she would. That was genuine on both sides. My mother called 3 days later. The conversation was short and did not go the way she had probably expected. Linda, I had no idea, Serena, about the hotel. You should have told us. You should have told me. Serena, maybe. Linda, there's no maybe about it. If I had known. Serena, if you had known, you would have treated me differently. I know that, Mom. That's actually the part that's hard to get past. Not that you didn't know what I owned, that you needed to know what I owned before you would treat me like I belonged. Silence. Serena, I'm your daughter, not a business card, not a balance sheet. I've been your daughter for 32 years, and the only time you've ever looked at me like I was worth looking at was 30 seconds ago, when you found out I own a 5-star hotel. Do you understand why that's the problem? She said, That's not fair, Serena. I said, I know. It really isn't. We ended the call. I don't think either of us was angry. I think we were both just finally seeing something clearly that we had both been circling for years. Camille called 2 weeks later. I almost didn't pick up. I picked up. Camille, I'm not calling to argue. I just needed to say that I'm sorry for what I said, for what I asked Anthony to do. I didn't know about the hotel, but that's not actually an excuse, is it? She said it like a question, but she already knew the answer. Serena. No, it's not. Camille, I was awful to you. I've been awful to you for years without really. I didn't see it. I think I didn't want to see it. I didn't say, yes, you were. I didn't say, it's fine. Both of those things would have been wrong in different directions. Serena, I appreciate you saying this. I need some time, but I appreciate it. She said okay. She said she'd wait. She said, and this surprised me, that she'd talked to Marcus about it, and he had said that the same thing I had, that she should wait and that she should mean it, and not just perform meaning it. Marcus went up considerably in my estimation at that moment. The family group chat, which I have never been added to, apparently had a period of significant activity in the days following the wedding. My cousin Dylan, who I am fond of, who has always been quietly decent, forwarded me a screenshot. I read it once, then deleted it. I don't need to hold those messages. I know what people think when they're scared. I know what people say when they're rearranging their story in real time. What I held on to instead was something different. I held on to the way Helena had walked into that ballroom with her tablet, ready. The way Anthony had looked at me, waiting for my direction, not anyone else's. The way James had inclined his head as I walked out. The way the string quartet had resumed playing without a pause the moment the doors swung shut. That is what a good team does. They keep the show running. They trust you to know what you're doing. They've learned over years of working together that when you make a call, there's a reason for it. That trust took 9 years to build. Nobody gave it to me. I earned it, one decision at a time. In this building that I made out of 12 rooms and a camp bed and a business plan I wrote at 23 by lamplight because Eleanor Voss had believed, without reservation, that I was worth believing in. It's been 3 months since the wedding. I'm in my office as I tell you this. The courtyard garden is doing well. We replanted it in spring and it's taken beautifully. The restaurant received a very good review last week in a publication that my mother used to read. Helena sent it to me with no comment. I sent back a single thumbs up. We have a full event calendar through September. I've been thinking these past months about what I actually wanted from that evening. Not what I did. I'm clear on what I did, but what I wanted. I think the honest answer is that I wanted to be seen. Not for what I own. I want to say that carefully because I know how it sounds. Not for the hotel. For what the hotel represents. For 9 years of getting up before the building opens and staying after it closes. For the decision to sleep on a camp bed rather than take a salary I hadn't earned yet. For the choice, at 23, to take the thing Eleanor left me and do something real with it instead of selling it and taking the easier path. I wanted my family to see that person. The person who made those choices. The person who learned from a small and precise woman who kept a guest house for 30 years. That the work is the thing. The work is always the thing. Everything else is just what the work produces. They didn't see that person because they never looked, and I'm learning, slowly, imperfectly, that you cannot make people look. You can only make sure that when they finally do, there is something real there to see. There was. There is. That has to be enough. My mother and I have spoken twice since the phone call. Both conversations were short and careful, the way early conversations are when something has shifted and neither party is quite sure yet how much weight the new ground will bear. We are not close. We may become something. I'm not in a hurry. I've learned, over the years, that the best things take their time and you can't rush them by wanting them badly enough. You can only do the work and see what comes. Camille and I have texted a few times. Nothing significant. She sent me a photo of a guest house she and Marcus visited on their honeymoon. A small place in the Portuguese countryside with the message reminded me of Eleanor's. I don't know how she knows what Eleanor's guest house looked like. I think maybe she looked it up. I think maybe she's trying. I replied, "It's beautiful," because it was. Table 11 at the Vos Grand now receives its champagne first. I made that a standing instruction the week after the wedding. Helena asked why. I said, because the people at the back of the room deserve it most. She wrote it into the event setup checklist without another question. That's what a good team does. I've also added one more thing to our event welcome protocol. When guests arrive at the Vos Grand for any private event, wedding, corporate dinner, whatever it may be, the floor coordinator is instructed to make particular note of any guest who seems uncertain of where they belong, who looks a little lost, who is maybe sitting at the edge of a table, looking at the room with that quiet expression that means, "I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here." When they see that person, they are instructed to approach them, to offer them a drink, to ask if there's anything they need, to make it clear, in whatever small way is available to them in that moment, that they are welcome. Because that is the thing about belonging. It is not granted by rooms. It is not handed down by families. It is not conditional on what you're wearing or which table you've been given or whose name you share. Belonging is a decision. You make it for yourself and then you make it for others when you have the chance. Eleanor Vos made it for me in a letter left with a solicitor in a line that said, "Serena knows what to do with it." She was right. I did. I do. My name is Serena Vos. I'm 32 years old. I own a hotel. I built it from 12 rooms and belief and a camp bed on a floor, and I would do every single difficult day of it again. My mother told me I didn't belong in that room. She was standing in something I built, and that is finally, completely enough. That's my story. If you made it all the way here, thank you. You didn't have to stay, and you did. And that means something to me. Before you go, I want to ask you something, because I think everyone watching this has a version of this story inside them somewhere. It might not be a hotel, it might not be a wedding, but I think most of us have been in a room, a real room, or a figurative one, where someone we loved told us we didn't belong. And I think most of us have had to make a decision about what to do with that. So here are your 3 options for the comments. Option 1. Has someone who was supposed to be in your corner ever underestimated you, and then been confronted with exactly how wrong they were? Tell me what that felt like. Option 2. Have you ever stayed quiet about something real in your life, something you built, something you achieved? Because the people around you never made you feel like it was safe to share it. What did you keep to yourself? And why? Option 3. Tell me something completely different. Your story. Whatever you're carrying, drop it in the comments. I read them. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. I've linked a few more stories in the description that I think hit just as hard. Until next time, you've built. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't yours.